Hello guys and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to recreate a project I did in the past. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can see that the first video I created was a pair authentication course. So in the past I just did it in a very simple way. I did it with Express.js and I decided to recreate this project. It was a long time that I wanted to try Nest.js, which is actually a framework built on top of Express, and I decided to try and I liked it a lot. So I recreated my pair authentication project with Nest.js. This is the official page of Nest.js, and we're going to use Prisma, which is awesome ORM for writing SQL. In my opinion, right now it's the easiest and the most efficient one. There are also options like type ORM and Sequelize, but when I tried the Prisma, it felt very easy to use. So we're going to use Prisma to interact with our database, and Nest.js, of course, as our framework. And you can see that they have a cat image here, so it's supposed to be good. Alright, so let me show you first the complete project. By the way, what I liked the most about Nest.js uh, is how the project is very well organized and you don't need to think too much to organize your project. They actually have some cool structure that they implement, and it's very good to have organized code. As a front-end React developer, I know that organized code is very important, and usually when you don't follow a clear structure, the code is going to be very hard to maintain and hard to read. So I liked the structure of this Nest.js application very much. So what we're going to be building is actually the same functionality of the previous project. So we're going to have authentication system. So first of all, you can see that we have this Prisma folder that we're going to use to interact with our database, create a schema, create migrations and stuff like that. And inside SRC, we have we have two modules. We have the Auth module and the users module. And inside the Auth module, we're going to place the logic for sign up, sign in, and sign out. And we're going to have JWT tokens implemented with cookies. I don't think there is any YouTube video that actually uses cookies for Nest.js. So I hope you enjoy this part. And we're going to have a users module, which basically will fetch all the users, which is going to be a public route. And we're going to use a protected route to fetch our user. So if we are logged in, we're going to be able to fetch our user with all the info. And I created this util folder just to place some constants like env variables and stuff like that. I'm not sure that this is the best practice for Nest.js, but if you have any better opinions, write me on the comments. I'm still new to Nest, so I created it in Express style, so we just have some env variables here. So anyway, this is the finished project. We're going to work with this to-do text that I created, and basically we're going to do all these things. We're going to generate Nest project and do everything from scratch. And that's it. So on the next video, I'm going to start generating the project. You can code along with me. Of course, the complete project is already pushed to GitHub, so you can download the code if you don't want to write it yourself. And this is going to be amazing boilerplate for any project that you want to do in the future. So you can use this authentication project to and basically to build on top of it anything you want. So this is it, and we can start working on generating the Nest project. Alright, let's begin by creating the project. So let's go to the docs and see what we're supposed to do. So as you can see here on the introduction, They say that you have to install the Nest.js CLI globally, so just do it. I already did it, so I'm not going to do it again. And then you create Nest new and project name. This is basically how you create the Nest project. So I'm going to use I'm not going to use the terminal from here because I want to save this space. So by the way, you can use it in the VS Code. I'm just going to open this new terminal every time I want to install something and to run the app. So I'm going to have here two tabs. And let's actually do the command nest new and the project name. So I'm inside my parent of Nest.js. So let's type here nest new, and let's say this is going to be YouTube Nest.js auth, and let's press enter. Now they ask me what package manager I want to use, so I will use just npm. You can use anything you would like. Alright, so it took some time and the installation finished. So as you can see, we got all these files from the installation. So let's actually already clean the project a little bit. So let's see what we have inside src. Okay, so the only thing that I need from here is this app module. Basically, we are not going to use any of this, and we can delete the imports also. And let's delete all these files except main.ts and the app module ts. And let's see what we have here. So here we actually having this function bootstrap, which is actually running the application, and by default is running on port 3000. So this is usually my React app. So let's change it to 5000. And I can get rid of this test folder because we are not going to do any of this. We don't need to write test because our code is going to be fine. And basically we're done. So this is our clean project. We don't have anything inside the app module TS. And this is the starting point that I wanted. Alright, so the next thing is going to be creating an Auth module with controller and service. So we're going to use the Nest CLI to actually generate us this module. So if you go back to the next Nest website, you can go to recipes and you have this CRUD generator tab. And here what it says that you can generate a new resource by implementing this command nestg resource, and of course you have to give it the resource name. So what we're going to create is auth, and we're going to use this no dash dash no spec to not create test files for this module. So let's go back to the terminal, not this, back to the terminal, and first of all let's cd to the YouTube folder, and let's paste this command, and let's say this is going to be auth and dash dash no spec. Now let's install this, and by the way it's going to ask us what resource we're going to create. So you have few options here. We're going to use REST API. Would you like to generate CRUD entry points? No, I don't want to do it. And let's check the project. Alright, so you can see this auth folder, and we're getting auth controller file, auth module, and auth service. And let's go to app module, and you can see that I already have import of the auth module that happened behind the scenes, so we don't have to do it manually. In the imports, we're going to import when we're connecting one model to another. So we can import it like this. And what we're going to do now is first I will explain a little bit what are controllers and providers, and we're going to work on our controller first. So controller is basically where we interact with the API calls. So we actually define our API routes in the controller, and the service is where we actually execute the logic of the route. So it's divided like this, and here we specify. So let's start with specifying the routes in the controller. Alright, so as you can see, we have this controller which is empty. We have a controller decorated here, so it says that this is the controller. We're going to have some post requests here, so let's create a post here. Post is coming from the Nest.js common. So this is going to be a post route, and I can already specify here the route. So let's say that this is going to be sign up, for example. I'm going to create a few of these, and now we have to create actually the function of sign up. And basically, for now we can just return some string or something. So let's return sign up route, just to test that it actually works. By the way, we're going to use Postman to test the routes, to test our API. So let's create a few more of this. And the next route is going to be sign in. And this is going to be also sign in. And let's change this to sign in. And the last route is not going to be a post, it's going to be a get route. So let's import it from Nest.js common. And this one is going to be sign out. So I can change all the strings already. So let's say here sign out and save this file. Now I want to actually check that everything works properly. So let's try to run the app, and let's try to go to Postman and create a post or get request to one of these routes. So let's go back to the terminal and let's see. We're going to use the command to start the development. If we go to package.json, the command is start dev. So what I need to do here is npm run start dev, like this. And let's see for a second that we don't have any errors, so it looks good. Now we need to go to Postman. Now let's try to do a post request, and as you can see, the route that I want is going to be auth and sign up. So let's try to do it. Localhost 5000, auth, and sign up. Hit send. And you can see that I'm getting back sign up route, which means that the routing actually works and the app is working properly now. Now, instead of returning the strings, we're going to implement the logic for the auth service. So as I said, this is just managing the route manager, and the auth service is where we actually do the logic. First, let's define the constructor already. I'm not going to put anything for now, but just to have it here. And let's create all these functions with the same names. So sign up, sign in, and sign out. And all of them are going to be async because later we're going to interact with the database. So first one is sign up and async sign in and async sign out. Okay, so for now, let's return, and let's say here, just let's say message, just for the test. This is sign up, so let's say sign up was successful just for the test. And okay, so now here let's return empty string and return empty string, and let's go back to the controller, and instead of returning this string we have this auth service. So what we can do is do this dot auth service, and here we have all the functions that I just created in the auth service. So I'm going to return the sign up, and basically this is going to return this message if everything works properly. So let's do the same here. So this is going to be this dot auth service and sign in, and this one is going to be, of course, the sign out. Now let's try to send this request again, and you can see a message, sign up was successful. So now the controller is connected to the service. Alright, so before we can actually do some things inside our auth service, we need to initialize the Prisma module and service, and we have to connect the Prisma service to the auth service. So we will be able to do here some queries and stuff inside the database, creating a user and stuff like that. So let's go back to the docs, and in recipes you have this Prisma tab that actually explains you how to connect to Prisma. So let's go through this and see what we need to do here. So first we need to install Prisma as a dev dependency. So let's just copy this command, and here I don't want to stop the server, so I have this another tab. Let's see, I need to cd to the YouTube folder, and we can install Prisma. Okay, now let's do npx prisma init to init the Prisma, and it's going to create us some things, including a .env file. So let's run this command and see what it gives us. npx prisma init. Okay, so let's go to the project, and you can see that they created the Prisma folder with a Prisma schema here, and by default I see that they give us Prisma client JS, DB provider Postgres, which is what we need, and the env is going to be database URL. Let me actually get rid of this comment and save the file. Now let's check the .env that they created for us. Okay, so we can get rid of this also, and you can see this database URL, which is the connection to our database basically. And to connect to Postgres database, I'm going to use a local database that I have in my machine. So here you can see a list of databases that I have, Postgres database. I'm not going to explain you how to actually create the database, because I think I have an explanation about it in my previous auth video. So it's very straightforward. You just need to install I think something from Postgres and just create a database. So I'm going to actually connect to this Pern auth database. So here in this string, I have to change this string according to my info. So I think my user is just Postgres, and the password, I think it's root, if I remember correctly. Localhost 5432, and my DB is going to be this pern auth. So let's type here pern auth. Let's save the CNV. Let me actually double check in my finished project. So it's supposed to be a string actually. PostgreSQL, Postgres root, localhost. Yeah, so I was correct, but let's copy it anyway, and let's just paste it here, so I won't have any mistakes. So this is the connection string to my database, and this is basically how it is connected, how the Prisma is connected to the database. First of all, let's restart the server, because usually when you add some things to the env file, you should restart the server. So let's go here and let's run the server again. npm run start dev. Alright, let's go back to the schema.prisma. So let me paste here my user model, and let me explain what fields the user is going to have. So it's going to have an ID, which is going to be type of string, and it's going to be a unique field, and the default is going to be generated by UUID. So it will generate a random string. The email is going to be string, and it's going to be unique. And we're going to have a hashed password, which is going to be string, and created at and updated at, which is going to be a date time. And the created at is going to be default as now, and updated at is going to be this special field at Prisma, which is just called updated at. So let's save this file. Now we're going to create a Prisma model and Prisma service. Okay, so the next thing is going to be this installation of Prisma client. So let's copy this command and let's install the Prisma client. And now we can actually generate the Prisma service. So this is the way that they generate it. So just going to copy, and it's going to connect the database when the app is loading, and close it when we close the app. And basically we can just create a prisma.service.ts file. So let's go to the Prisma folder and create a new file here, prisma.service.ts. and we can paste this code here. Now only thing left is to create a Prisma model. So let's create a new file here, again inside Prisma folder, prisma.module.ts. And this is what we need from the Prisma module. So a new thing you can notice here that we're using this global decorator, because I don't want to import this Prisma service, Prisma module, sorry, in every module that I going to use it. So I use this global decorator, and basically this module is going to have Prisma service as a provider, and it's going to export it. Okay, so I think we are done with the Prisma setup. Now we have to create a migration to actually generate the SQL files. So let's go to the Prisma docs, and what I see here is we're going to use this Prisma migrate dev. I'm going to give it a name. So let's copy this, and inside the terminal, let's paste it, and let's just call it init. And Prisma command not found, so of course we have to use npx in the beginning. And let's see, The following migrations are applied to the database missing, but we need to reset Postgres database. Let's say yes. I'm not sure what this warning is. And the migration is supposed to be finished. So as you can see, we have this folder now, migrations. And what these folders contain is actually, if I expand it a little bit, you can see that we have this init name that I gave the migration. And inside this folder is going to be actually the SQL file. So as you can see, this SQL file is a representation of our SQL schema that we created here. So this user schema is actually this user table. So what we're going to do next is to connect the Prisma service to the Auth service, so we will be able to use our Prisma database here in the Auth service. Alright, so let's try to connect the Prisma service. So because we defined it as a global module, let's try to use it right here. So let's say here private, let's call it Prisma. It's going to be Prisma service, which is coming from the Prisma service. And now let's say here this dot Prisma dot user, for example, because we have this user table, and you can see that I have all these properties on the user table. So basically I think everything is working, and we can start implementing the logic for this routes. Alright, so there are a few more things we have to do to actually be able to implement this logic. So one of the things is how can I actually get the credentials of the user. So let's say that I want to sign up. I want to get the email and the password of the user. So what I'm going to do is, let's save this file for now. Let's go back to the Auth controller, and I have to somehow get the request body from the route. So what I can do inside this signup is to define here a decorator called body, and again it's coming from Nest.js common, and I can say that this body is going to have a DTO object. So I just call it DTO. So right now it has any type, and I can pass this DTO to the signup and actually be able to get the info from the DTO. So what is this DTO? This DTO is actually means data transfer object, and we're going to create it in a separate file here, in a separate folder here. So let's create a folder here called DTO, and here we can say this is going to be auth DTO.ts, because the DTO for sign up and DTO for sign in is going to be the same. It's just email and password. And to create a general auth DTO.ts, we could, for example, say if they were different, we could say sign up DTO.ts and sign in DTO.ts, and we're not going to do it now because it's the same. Alright, so we're back to the Nest.js docs, and what we need now is to install some things to be able to actually use this DTO properly and to validate the data that we are getting. So basically, this DTO is going to check the password and email fields and check if they are correct. So if you go here to the techniques and validation, you can see this using the built-in validation pipe, and what we need to install this class validator and class transformer, and we can go back to our terminal, install it, npm npm i, Alright, so first of all, I want to go to the main and use this use global pipes and create a new validation pipe. So let's copy this. Let's go to main.ts and let's add it. Actually, I think I want to add it. Okay, so let's add it in the middle. So create new validation pipe, which is coming from Nest.js common. Now I can save this and let's go to the Auth DTO, and you can see that here the example they show again a body which is going to be create user DTO, and it's going to be the type of create user DTO. Basically you can see that I have this class validator that I can import some checks from here. For example, is email is not empty, and just create a DTO class and just check this kind of validations on the fields that I want. So email, you can see that is specified as string, password is string, and email is supposed to be email, and password is supposed to be not empty. I'm going to paste my manual checks for the DTO, so let's go back here. And these are the DTOs, these are the checks that I'm going to use. So let's save. And basically you can see that I have this auth DTO, and it has email, which is a string, and password, which is a string. And it's going to check if password is not, if email is not empty, if it's a string, if it's an email. Actually, I don't think I need any of this because it's enough to check if it's just an email. And the password is supposed to be not empty and string, and the length is going to be between 3 and 20 characters, and the message that I provided here is going to be password has to be between 3 and 20 characters. And basically we can save this file. Now inside the auth controller I can say that this DTO is going to be auth DTO, and we import it like this, and we can pass the DTO to the signup function, which is inside the auth service. And of course TypeScript is going to complain because this function is not expecting a DTO. So what we do here is we will go to auth service, and we say here that the signup is going to have a DTO, which is going to be the auth DTO. And now what I can do is I can say const, and let's say this is the DTO, and you can see here that I have the fields email and password. So basically now I know that I'm getting this email and password from the user, and I can use these fields to work with the database. Now let's actually check if this validation pipe's actually working, and I'm supposed to get error if I don't supply these fields. So we're going to check this validation pipe. Oh, by the way, I think I forgot to implement here something. To have a whitelist of true, I will explain in a moment what it does. So basically, whitelist true means that only the field that I specified in the DTO are going to pass to the function. So let's say if I open Postman and go here, actually I'll already, let's try to do something without email because I want to have error. So if I add another field here, I don't know, for example role, and I say here admin, it is not going to pass through the validation pipe, and it's not going to go to the function. So basically this is what whitelist does. Now I supposed to get an error for the email. Let's try to hit the sign up out, and seems like I'm not getting anything. Alright, sorry about the error. I just forgot to import the Prisma module inside the app module, and this is why it couldn't find it. So basically now, let's try to do the post request again. And you can see that I'm having an error with status code 400, and the message email must be an email. This is means that the validation pipe working properly. Now let's try to do, for example, 2 short password, and now we're supposed to get 2 errors, which is good. Now let's supply a valid email, test@gmail.com, and the password is going to be 123. So basically now I should pass the validations, and you can see sign up was successful. Of course, we're not making any sign up, we are not interacting with the database yet, but you can see that it actually working because in the Auth service I got to this point where I return this message, which means that I passed the validations from the DTO. Okay guys, so we are finally able to create the user and work on this sign up logic. So the first thing that we need to do is we have to check if the email doesn't exist in the database, because if the email already taken, we cannot create the user because the email is supposed to be unique. So now we're going to use the Prisma service. So first I want to search the user by the email. So let's say here const found user. It's going to be await, and we're going to use this dot prisma dot user, and we're going to use find unique. And what we need to do here is to say where, and let's say here where email. So it's basically the same as doing email. So this is just a shortcut for that. And okay, so we're doing this. And if we have a found user, so this means that the email is already taken. So if, let's say here, if found user, if found user, so I don't want to continue with the function. I just want to throw an error and exit the function. So I'm going to use here throw a new and how do they call it? Bad request exception. So this bad request exception can be imported from the Nestjs common, and I can supply here the message that I want to display. So if I find the user, I want to say email already exists. Alright, so if we have the user, we throw this bad request exception. And if we don't find the user, what I want to do before I save the user is to hash the password and to save the user with the email and the hashed password. So for hashing the password, let's go real quick to the Nest.js docs to encryption and hashing section. And we can go down here, and here they have explanation of how to use bcrypt. So first we need to install bcrypt and install the bcrypt types. So let's install the bcrypt types first as a dev dependency. So inside our terminal, let's install this first, and now we can npm i bcrypt also. Okay, and let's check package.json. So dependencies bcrypt and types bcrypt. Okay, so now let's import this bcrypt over here. Import, let's say everything b bcrypt from bcrypt. I think supposed to do it like that. Yeah. Alright, so now what I want to do is actually let's create a helper function for hashing the password. So what I need here is to the hash is going to be await bcrypt.hash password and salt rounds. Okay, so let's go down here. Let's actually make some spaces and let's create here another async function and call it hash password. And this function is going to take a password as string. And let's say here that I want to let's say const hashed password. It's going to be await. First, let me actually copy this. Let's copy this salt rounds. Let's make it 10 and await bcrypt.hash. And we can copy this line of code. So we're going to hash the password with the bcrypt, and then I want to return the hashed password. And if I hover over this, I can see that TypeScript already knows that I'm going to return a promise with type of string. So we can use this hash password function in my sign-up. So let's say here that I want that const hashed password is going to be equal to it's going to be async, so await this dot hash password. So we're going to pass the password to the function, this password, and now we can create the user with the email and the hashed password. So let's say here const. Actually, I don't have to define it as a variable. I'm just going to await, and let's say this dot prisma dot user dot create, and now I think there is a data object, yeah, and with the data object I suppose to put the email, so email, and what else I need, just the hashed password. So this is how we create the user, very simple. All the other fields are going to be created manually. The ID is going to be created that, updated that, going to be created manually, so I don't have to do it. And basically, so basically this is it. I'm just going to return this message, sign up was successful. I don't have to return this user. And okay, let's save and let's try to run this again with Postman. And let's go here and try to create this user with these fields. Let's hit send. Sign up was successful. So the way that we're going to test if the user actually created is something that is called Prisma Studio, where I think the command is npx Prisma Studio. I hope that I'm correct. Yeah, alright. So we have this Prisma Studio where we can actually check our database, and look at this. We have the user that we just created with the hashed password. So all of this is my hashed password. Actually, we can do a lot of things here also. We can delete this user and add records and stuff like that. So this is actually the reflection of our database. Alright, so we finished with the sign up function. We can close this for now. It was pretty easy. Now we're going to work on the sign in functionality. Alright, so the sign-in function is going to be more difficult to implement because we're going to need actually the JWT service and all these things to actually be able to send a cookie with, the JWT to the user. But let's start working on it slowly, step by step. And the first thing actually that we need to do is to go to the controller. And here I want to say that I'm also, this sign-in is going to be also a post request with the body of DTO that we defined earlier. And I'm going to pass this DTO to the sign-in. Basically, the user going to sign in with email and password, the same as the sign up. So let's save this. And inside the service, let's say that here we're getting the DTO as of DTO. And basically we can do the same of the structuring, so const, and this is going to be DTO, and here we have the email and the password. Alright, so again I want to check if I can find the user by the email, but now it's in purpose to check if the user provided a valid email. So we can actually copy this section from the signup and we can paste it here. And again, we're going to find the user by the email. And in this condition, if we don't find the user, that means that the user provided a wrong email. So we can say here, instead of email already exists, we can say wrong credentials. Alright, the next thing I have to do is to check if the password is actually correct. So here we're going to use the bcrypt again, and we can use another helper function. By the way, right now I can see that we have a duplication here, so we can just actually return the await statement like this. So let's say return, and it's going to be the same. It's going to return a promise with a string. So here, let's create another helper function. I think let's say compare passwords, and what we're going to get from this function. Let's say here args is going to be an object, and we can say here that we have to get the password and the hash. The hash is going to be the hashed password. Both of them are going to be string. And let's say if we have an info here of compare, yeah, so is match and await bcrypt compare with the password and the hash. So we can take this and we can say return await bcrypt. So it's not going to be like this, it's going to be args.password and args.hash, and the return statement is going to return us a boolean. So if you can see here, promise boolean. So if we get true from this function, that actually means that the password is correct. The password that the user provided is correct because we compared it with the hashed password. So basically, let's say here that I want to, let's put it in a variable, const is match is going to be await and compare passwords, and this compare passwords having an object with the password, and the hash password is going to be hash, and we can say found user dot hashed password. and we can say here if no is match, and again we can return this bad request exception. So basically just copy this, it's going to be exactly the same. If no match, going to throw new bad request exception of wrong credentials. And after all this, we can be sure that the user has provided the right email and password. And now we can sign the JWT token. So we can say here sign JWT and return to the user. And to do this, we're going to do some work before. So let's start working on this JWT signing. Okay, so before we start, we need to install this Nest JWT for now to actually be able to sign the JWT token. So you can see that we have the JWT service that we can import, and then we can use JWT service.sign to sign the token with the payload that we want, and npm i Nestjs JWT. Okay, so first I have to import a JWT model. So let's go to the Auth module and let's import here from Nest JWT, and this is going to be the how they call it, JWT module. So let's take this. So remember to import module to one module to another. We use imports, and here I place this JWT module. Now I'm going back to the Auth service, and here import from Nest JWT and JWT service. Okay, so here we can say private JWT is going to be JWT service. And now we can use this JWT to sign the token. So let's create another helper function here. Async sign token. It's going to take args again, and the args I want to assign the ID of the user and the email. So let's say here ID string and email string, because later we're going to use these fields to check which user we have in the JWT. So let's say here we can use here let's say const payload is going to be equals to args, which is basically payload now is equals to ID string and email string. Let's see this dot JWT, let's say here sign sync, and here I specify the payload, and here I specify the options. For the options I want to have the secret, so the secret, let's actually import it. Wait, I think I actually didn't create the secret yet. Let's check the env. No, I didn't create a secret, so let's say here let's create a env variable real quick. So JWT secret is going to be equal to secret, and we have to restart the server. But first of all, let me actually create here the utils folder. So let's say utils, and as I did in the complete project, I'm going to have constants.ts, and from here I want to import the env variables. So const jwt secret is going to be process.env, and I don't have the secret updated yet because I need to actually restart the server. So let's close this, and let's say the secret is going to be jwt secret. Will it auto import? Let's go here, import jwt secret from utils constants. Forgot to export it, so let's say here export, and back to the Auth service. So now I'm supposed to have the secret, and let me actually restart the app. So start the server. Okay, and now we're going to use this sign token helper function. So let's use it down here, and let's say const token equals await sign token, and the args that I need are ID and email, which are going to be the found user dot ID and found user dot email. And basically now token void token basically now I'm not returning this, so let's say here return and promise string. Okay, so basically now this token supposed to be the JWT token. So let's actually try to test it by returning the token, and now I can try to sign in with the user that I created. So this is my user, test@gmail.com. So let's go to Postman, and these are the fields, the correct fields. Let's try to go to sign in, and send, and you can see that I'm getting the token. So actually the sign-in functionality works. The only thing that we have to add here is, instead of sending the token like this, I'm going to actually send it as a cookie to the client. Alright, to send the cookie is actually pretty easy. So first let's install this cookie parser and the types cookie parser as dev dependency. So let's go back to the terminal, and this is my Prisma Studio. So let's go here and install npmi cookie parser, and let's copy also this line, and let's install the dev types. And what we need to do here is we have to import it in the main.ts file like that, and we're going to use the cookie parser in the main.ts. So let's import the cookie parser, and let's say here app.use, and we can say cookie parser like that. Do we need to do anything else here? Okay, so basically now if I go to my app, I need to go to the auth controller and I have to supply some things here. Not only the body, but I have to supply the request and the response. Actually, I don't need the request, I need only the response, but just to show you that this way I'm importing the request from Nest.js common, and I can say here this is going to be rec, and I can say also res, this is going to be the response, and I can take this rec and res and supply them to the sign-in, so rec and res, like that, and go back to the auth service, and let's say here that I supposed to get rec and res, and now this rec and res are going to be request. This is going to be from Express, because this is the request and response that are coming from Express, and this one is going to be response from Express. And as you know, to send the cookie to the client, we're going to use res.cookie, and we're going to send the token. So basically here, what I want to do is res.cookie, and here we specify the name of the cookie, so let's just call it JWT, or let's just call it token, and here I have to actually put the value, so the value is token. By the way, I want to check that if I for some reason don't have a token, so if no token, let's say here throw new forbidden exception. Okay, so if for some reason we don't have this token, I want to stop the function, and if we have the token, I'm going to send the token as a cookie to the client, and here instead of sending the token again, let's say here just res.send, and let's say message and logged in successfully. Okay, so now we're going to test it, and we're going to see if I'm getting the cookie back from the server. So first let me check that everything is working. Okay, so let's go to Postman, and now let's try to send one more time. Logged in successfully, and if I go to the cookies section, you can see that I'm having this JWT that I got from the server, and now it's saved in the cookie. And basically we done also with the sign-in, so it was a little bit more complex, but it wasn't so bad. Now the only thing left is to actually do the sign out, which is going to be very easy. So the only thing we do here is we clean the token from the client. So how we do it, again I'm going to use the response and request. So let's go back to auth controller, and I can just copy this request and response to the sign out, and here I can say rec and res, and this is going to be get request, so I don't have any body here. And basically now I can go to auth service, and I can get, again I can just copy this request and response, and to clear the cookie what I need to do is res.clear cookie, and I specify the name, So the name is the name is token. So token, and we can send res dot send, and let's say here message logged out successfully, and we can already test it. So let's go back to Postman and create a GET request to sign out, hit send, and I don't have the cookie. I deleted it correctly, and of course I have the message logged out successfully. Alright, great. We finished with all this auth functionality. Now the only thing left to do is to create a user resource, and we're going to have two functions. One is going to fetch all the users, which is going to be a public route, and one is going to be fetching a user by ID, which is going to be guarded by auth guard that we're going to create. So let's start working on that, and we will wrap up the project. Let's actually create the user resource first. So as you remember, to create the resource, we're going to use this command Nestj resource, and we're going to give the resource the name, and it's actually going to be users, not user. I think this is the best practice to use it like that. Again, comment below what you think about that. So Nestj resource users, and we're going to use a no spec flag to not generate test files. So let's go to our terminal and paste the command here, users, and let's say no spec. Okay, so we're generating REST API, and I don't want any CRUD entry points. Okay, so we have this users resource, and of course the users module auto imported. So let's see what we need from the users controller. So first of all, I'm going to have a route to fetch a single user. So this one is going to be a get request, and here we can say we can actually call it get my user. And where do I want to get the ID from? So this is going to be a get request. So I want to get the ID from params, and this is supposed to be the route. So the route, let's just say ID like that. So users/ID. Alright, so let's define how is this params object is going to look like. So I can say that I'm going to get ID, which is going to be a string. And for now, let me actually create you know what, let's create all the routes already. So this one is going to be get, and this is going to be to get all the users. So we can say get users. And here I don't have any params, and I don't have any route, so it's just going to be to localhost 5000/users. And now we can say no, we cannot say, because we need to actually go to the service and create these functions. So let's say here for now constructor is going to be empty, and we can say now that get, it's going to be of course async, get my user, and async get users, like that. And we can save, and let's say that get my users supposed to get the ID as a string. So say here ID, not if, ID is a string, and get my users is not going to get anything. So now I can say here this dot get my user. I'm going to have the ID from the params. So actually I need to say params.id, and it's not working properly. It's this dot user service dot get my user. Okay, so now it's working properly. And this one is this dot user service and get users. Of course, I have to return this and return this. Alright, so we have the routes. Now let's go back to the service. Let's actually get the Prisma from, let's say here, private Prisma is going to be Prisma service, and to get the users we're just going to return the users. So let's say here return await this dot prisma dot user, and I'm going to find many. Don't want to add anything, so we will find all the users. And this is a promise user. Okay, so let's save. So let's test this get users route. So this one is going to be just get request to users, and you can see that I'm getting array of one user because I created only one user for now. The only thing that actually I have to change here is I want to get rid of all these files, all these fields, sorry. I want to return only the ID and the email. So how do I do it? I can say here select, and in the select I have all the fields. So let's say that I want the ID, so I have to say ID true, and I want to have the email, and this one is true. And basically now I will get only the ID and the email. So if I run this again, now you can see that I getting only these fields, which is what I want actually from this route. And when we work on this get my user, I want to return all the fields, like not all the fields, not including the password, but I want to return also the created it and updated it. And this is basically going to be the private route, and this is the last thing that we're going to work on this project. Okay, so before we can implement the JWT strategy and guard, we need to install some things related to passport. So you can see this is actually my finished project JSON package JSON. So you can see that I highlight the passport field here, and you can see that we need Nest.js passport JWT, and also dev dependency types passport JWT. So first let's go to our terminal and install all these dependencies. So we're going to install these dependencies: Nestjs passport, and passport JWT. And after it installed, we're going to install a dev dependency npmi -d, and we're going to install types passport JWT. Well, now we can actually go to the auth folder and I'm going to create here two files. So let's create jwt guard guard.ts, and let's create another file, jwt jwt strategy.ts. Alright, so before we create the strategy, let's go to the auth module, and we need to import the passport module first. So let's say here passport module from Nest.js passport. And now I want to go to the jwt strategy, and I'm just going to paste here the strategy because there is a lot of boilerplate, so I will just paste it and explain what we're doing here. So basically, if you go to the docs, you can see that this is usually how you create a JWT strategy is by creating this class JWT strategy, and it extends passport strategy. And as you can see here, you could see in the docs that usually what they do is extract the JWT from a header as bearer token, but in our case we are going to do it from the cookies. So instead, you can see that this is actually an array, and I can even get rid of this because we are not going to use this strategy from header. So let's get rid of this, and this is our strategy that I created manually. So the JWT strategy extract JWT, and basically this is going to have a request, and it's going to check if we have request.cookies and we have a token in request.cookies. Then we return request.cookies.token, otherwise we return null. And this is a function that the default function that validates the token. So now let me first save this auth module file and the JWT strategy. And now we have to create the JWT guard that we're going to use for the routes. And this way is how we will create the guard. We just export a class JWT auth guard, and it extends the auth guard that is coming from Nest.js passport, and here we supply the string with the strategy. So let me check the terminal that everything is working properly. I don't see any errors for now. And now what we can do is we can use the strategy in the routes, the guard, sorry, in the routes that we need to use it. So as I said before, we're going to use it in the users, and I want to guard this get my user route. Alright, now we have to go to the users module, and we have to supply the JWT strategy here in the providers. So let's say here JWT strategy, which is coming from the strategy that we created inside the auth folder. And let's save it. And now let's go to the users controller, and this is how we're going to use the guard. So here we specify decorator use guards, and we have to pass the JWT auth guard. So let's say here the JWT auth guard, and now this route should be protected by the JWT strategy. So let's open Postman and actually check what we are getting. Okay, so in Postman I'm going to use the route to get a user. So it's going to be users and then /ID. So let's say some random ID here. Doesn't matter what I type for now. and hit send. And you can see that I'm having a status code 401 unauthorized. Okay, so let me actually try to comment this and see that we can actually not display this error. So if I don't have the guard, so I'm not getting anything, but I'm not getting the error, which is good. So this guard actually now it works. So let's go to the users service, and I want to actually return something from the function if I pass it. So let's use this Prisma to find the user by ID and return it. So let's say here const user equals this dot Prisma dot user, and we can say find unique because the ID is going to be unique. And here we say where ID, and this should give me the user if I pass the auth card. So let's try now to actually log in and to hit this route again, and let's check if I having the user. So let's say here return, and I can say my user is going to be the user. Let's just say user, doesn't matter. So user, and now we're supposed to log in. So let's go here. The fields are correct, so we're going to make a post request to auth sign in because I want to have a cookie. Okay, so now I have this cookie, and what I need, actually I need the ID of the user. So let's go to the Prisma studio. Let me actually open it. So okay, so I need this user's ID because I want to find the user by ID. How can I copy this? This is the way. So copy, and let's go to Postman and change it to get request, and it's going to be users and the ID. Let's hit send, and of course now I'm getting the user back because I passed the auth card, because I have this cookie that I supplied, and I provided a valid ID here, so I got back the user. Alright, so basically what we have to do now is there is one more issue that we need to fix. I want to make sure that the user that is logged in can get only his user. So I cannot be logged in and get any user that I want by any ID, in my database. So I want to make sure that only if I'm logged in as this user, I can get only this user. So now we're going to work on this part and we will finish with the project. First of all, to do this test, I want to create another user. So let's create a post request, and it's going to be auth sign up, and actually I have to specify here a different email, so let's say test2. Okay, now I supposed to have two users. Let's check it in the Prisma Studio. Okay, cool. Now I have two users, and I want to test that only if I'm logged in as this user, I can get only this user, not the other user if I, for example, type manually his ID. So this is how we're going to do this. First, I want to go to the user's controller, and I want to get here the request and response uh, from this route. So let's say here again, let's specify here a request. Actually, I need only the request, so we can actually skip the response. So let's say that I want to get here the request. and let's go to users service, and we can say rec is going to be request from express. And basically now, because I have this auth guard, you can see that if I type here request dot user, you can see that actually the auth guard is passing me the decoded values for my JWT. So basically, if I go to the strategy, the user will have this payload with ID and email. So let's say here that this request.user, this is going to be const decoded user is going to be request.user, and let me actually specify here that it's going to be as ID string and email string. Okay, so this is one thing. Another thing I wanted to do, if I, for example, supply a wrong route or something with on the params, and I don't find the user, I want to return the error. So if no user, let's throw new not found exception, not found exception. Okay, so the last thing I want to check is only if this user ID, so the user that we found, only if it has the same ID as the decoded user that coming from the JWT payload, then I want to show the user. So let's say here, if the user.id is not equals to decoded user.id, and then I want to send a forbidden exception. So let's throw new forbidden exception. So now basically only if I am the user that is logged in, I can see only my details. And the last thing, I don't want to send the password of the user, so I can do again this select and select all the fields that I want, but I know that I want all the fields except the password, so I can just say to short it, I can say delete user dot hashed password, and then I can send the user. So now let's see if I go to Postman. So let me actually, I think I'm logged in. Yes, I'm still logged in as the test gmail.com. So let's go to the get request, and let's say here users, and I need the ID for this user. So let's check it in the Prisma Studio. Right now the cookie that I'm logged in is for this user. So let's take his ID and try to get his info. So users/id and hit send, and you can see that I don't have the password that is coming back, which is good, and I have the user details. And now what we have to check is to try to get the other user. So let's take his ID and copy, and now I'm going to change this route to the other user and hit send, and you can see that I have error with for free status and the message of forbidden. We are finished with protecting this route, and now only if a valid JWT and only if the JWT token belongs to the user that's trying to get it, only then we will get the user. Alright guys, to summarize things, this was the authentication course that I created in the past and I recreated it with Nest.js. I actually really enjoyed creating this Auth system with Nest.js. I think it's modern and much easier to do applications with that. I haven't tried Nest.js in production yet, and as I said, of course, I'm new to Nest.js, so if you have any comments to post about better best practices that I implemented here, so just do it. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any request to maybe extend this course and create some more complex stuff with this authentication, so comment below. And I hope you enjoyed the course, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you guys, and bye.